What's up guys, it's Dario from Bluebird and I'm back with what is essentially part 2 of buying a coffee roaster. In part 1 I spoke about the decision-making process behind choosing our Genio 15 Pro edition. We had a number of machines to decide between, and essentially it came down to a few key reasons. If you haven't watched that video, I'd highly recommend it. I unpacked those reasons and the machines we were considering in quite a lot of detail. And I spoke about a few key points I was looking forward to on the Genio machine, from software to a few interesting pieces of technology. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about what it has been like to receive the machine, commission this machine, decommission our old machine, and switch all our profiles over. The truth of the matter is that it's been a lot more time intensive and probably a bit more difficult than any of us expected. The day the Genio arrived was a beautiful and exciting day. This truck reversed down in front of our roastery. Our current space is at the old mushroom farm and we occupy a mushroom tunnel. You can actually see the installation behind me inside the old tunnel. It's quite an interesting space, but it has its challenges. One of those challenges is we don't have a proper service entrance. So the machine was actually delivered in front of our roastery, in between two growing tunnels, and the truck literally just fits. We had a tail jack on the truck and lowered down this massive box with our roaster inside. We had a few tentative and scary moments as the tailgate was lowering and bouncing this massive box around, and you've got your baby inside with this massive investment, this beautiful custom machine that we haven't seen in person as yet, in all its glory. We saw it while Genio was busy manufacturing it, and there were some scary moments, to be honest with you, as it was coming down. The process of unboxing was extremely exciting, and the next step was getting it out of this box and onto the ground, which turned out to be a bit of a nightmare. We don't have a forklift on the property, and there was a bit of maneuvering involved. Fortunately, using 2 pallet jacks, we managed to move it into the roastery, just fits through our doorway, and we brought it into the space that it currently sits in and started assembling the bits and pieces, the chaff cyclone, and a few little bits and pieces that had to be put on, like a few of the motors and the hopper and so on and so forth. Once the machine was set up and in position, as you can imagine, all we wanted to do was start roasting on it. But it's not that simple. If you've never installed a roast machine, there are a lot of moving parts. We had a new chimney to install, we had gas lines to move, and it took a few days, if not a week or so, to get all of that set up. In that process, we learned a few valuable lessons. The gas installation was fairly simple, but we were puzzling as to why the pressure wasn't reading correctly. It turns out that the analog gauge on our machine was actually faulty. So going through the whole process with Genio over video calls and with our gas technician in the roastery, we eventually figured out that the gas pressure was perfect, but the gauge was actually faulty. But that's fine because we're using a digital gauge at the burner through the Genio software, so it's not a big issue, but we did have to learn that lesson the hard way. I think that's a key lesson as well. When you're installing a roaster, analog gauges can fail. The next step was getting the chimney installed. Now we went with a stainless steel chimney. It was a bit of a mission because I think we've got about 12 meters of pipe to get the cyclone exhaust or cyclone chimney out the wall, and at the moment it kind of looks like a Golf GTI exhaust pipe sticking out the back of the roaster. We've got 2 pipes cut at a 45-degree angle, and initially working perfectly. Our chimney was great. We could see strong airflow. We're doing all the airflow tests that we normally do at the machine itself, and everything was working perfectly. And then all of a sudden we started experiencing, probably I'd say 3 weeks after installing the machine, we started experiencing some airflow issues, and this has got nothing to do with Genio. This is purely an airflow issue that we had due to an installation mistake on our chimney, and maybe our hard-learned lesson can save you some time and energy and frustration. We started finding like tons and tons of chaff collecting in the chaff drawer, and immediately we thought there was an issue with our airflow. We increased it, tested at the tri hole as we know to do, and did a few other tests as well. Everything seemed to be working well, and we couldn't figure out why the chaff wasn't being exhausted out of our machine. It turns out that in the installation process, the chimney installer placed a little filter or mesh over the end of our chimney, but slightly recessed, to stop birds and bats and so on from flying in. We had a few bats in our previous chimney system, so it seemed like a good idea. No one thought otherwise. No one taught us otherwise. Unfortunately, not a good idea. Chaff built up with coffee oils around that mesh and caused a block. And essentially we had airflow flowing through, but there was a bit of back pressure coming into our system, and we didn't have proper airflow. So that was a huge lesson. We've removed that, and the problem being solved immediately. Unfortunately, in that process, we had a couple of chaff fires, including a fairly significant one in our exhaust within the roaster. But we only discovered that the next day. The fire happened right at the end of our roast day, fortunately. But I came into the roastery first the next day, and it smelled like an ashtray. It was terrible. Opened the machine up and discovered this pile of burnt chaff inside the exhaust system. So to clarify, that was not Genio's mistake. That was our mistake, the chimney installer's mistake, and probably just a bit of misinformation, which could have saved us a bit of an issue there. But no harm, no foul. The roaster's working perfectly now. Lesson learned. So that was gas, that was chimney, that was getting the roaster installed. Now we're up and running, we're roasting coffee. So once our new machine was up and running, we obviously had the intimidating, exciting, however you want to think about it, process of moving all of our profiles over onto our new machine. At any one time, we generally have around 14 coffees we're roasting. A few of those will end up in our blend, the Friendly blend, into the Dreamer blend, and then also all of our single origins. We normally have around 10 to 12 singles at a time, and it's a lot of coffees to reprofile at once. Of course, we built up a tiny bit of stock to see us through that week of commissioning the new machine, but you can't build up a huge amount of stock with freshly roasted coffee. So the process of reprofiling happened very quickly. It had to happen very quickly, and we certainly found it very challenging. This machine roasts very different to our 10 kilo golden that we decommissioned, in the way that it maintains energy, in the way that certainly the end of the roast profile happens. We're finding that we have longer time off the crack at the moment, with a very similar end temperature and color to before. When I say similar end temperature, not necessarily the same numbers, but similar in the amount of temperature gained from crack to the end of the roast, which is an important variable that we look at. And essentially, it took us a bit longer than we expected to work that out. We were aiming for similar time after crack intervals or periods in our new roast profiles, and we just weren't gaining color as fast as we needed to. And we found through testing and trial and error that actually this new roaster needed a slightly new style or approach to roasting to end up with our style of coffee, if that makes sense. So what is our style of coffee? We like lighter roasted single origins, and then we obviously develop our Friendly blend a bit more for those of you who've tasted it, to make it a bit easier to work with in a cafe environment. But our singles, really what we're looking for is clarity of flavor. We want to find balance. We want sweetness, and we want clarity of flavor. We don't want to taste the roaster. We don't want to taste the roasting process. We don't want smokiness. We don't want roastiness. That's really, really important to us. So when moving all our profiles over, that was a focus for us to end up with well-developed coffee with great sweetness, great balance, relatively easy to work with, but at the same time without having any roastiness. I think the first few batches that went out, our customers are amazing. We engaged, we worked together, and we definitely tweaked and maneuvered our way through this process of reprofiling our coffees over a few week period. Some of those initial batches were very green, and unfortunately we even shipped out a few batches that now I regret big time, just because they probably were a bit harder to extract. They were perhaps well developed enough, but not where we have ended up in terms of our profiles now. So as I sit here, I'm extremely happy with where we are from a profile perspective, but a big thing to consider when you're moving machines is it's going to take some time. Plan for that. If you can keep your existing machine running while moving on to a new machine, that is a really great position to be in. Unfortunately, we didn't have the space, and we also pre-sold our outgoing machine before our new machine arrived. So the switch happened at exactly the same time. So we didn't have that luxury. Unfortunately, I wish that we had if we could go back and do it again. Okay, so we've spoken about installing the machine, we've spoken about reprofiling, and those were probably two of the biggest stumbling blocks to getting comfortable on the new machine. There was a process to learning the software, learning the controls, and Genio were fantastic. They got us on a video call, took us through a few roasts, and just helped us to navigate all of those things. We then unfortunately had quite a few issues with our machine. This isn't a sponsored post, a sponsored video or anything like that. I'm going to talk very openly about our experience. We had a few issues with, I suppose guinea pig issues being one of the first pro models with a bunch of new technology, and to date we still aren't using a few of those pieces of technology, one of which is the air pressure sensor in our chimney, because the actual coupling for the air pressure sensor is the wrong coupling, and we're waiting for a replacement to be sent down to us. Is that a major issue? No, we're roasting great coffee. It's a new tool that might assist us in doing some interesting things, but our machine is running really, really well. What I will say is that to Genio's credit, they have been there to answer our phone calls and our WhatsApps immediately. They've been unreal with support. They've actually had their team travel down to us to come and replace a bunch of parts on the machine that needed replacing. And Shane Villy specifically from Genio, dude, you're an absolute legend. Thank you so much. I know when you see my number on your phone right now, you just cringe. And fortunately, we threw most of it, and the machine is running really, really well. A key point here is in the process of installing this machine and experiencing some frustrations, I engaged with a friend of mine who is a roaster consultant and a Q grader, and he told me that they had a bunch of issues installing a Gießen recently down in Cape Town, and it doesn't seem to be unusual for these pieces of equipment to have their teething issues when first installing them. So to Genio's credit, and a decision that I feel very happy with, is the fact that the support before we bought the machine was amazing. It has continued to be really great, and the fact that they're 5 hours up the road from us means it's very easy to have them come down and assist us and support. We've also had our destoner installed recently and really, really enjoying it. We've pulled, I think, 4 or 5 stones out in the past few weeks, so I'm chuffed that we have the piece of equipment. Super concerned about how many stones went out to our customers in the past, but there's nothing we can do about that now. We can just be chuffed we have the piece of equipment in. One of the things to bear in mind is that with Genio specifically, this is the 3rd, I believe, destoner that they've made. So again, some teething issues, the filter's getting clogged really quickly at the moment. They're searching for a solution for that. If you are buying one, definitely talk to them about the filter and make sure that problem has been resolved. I would also say it's important to get a bit of training on it. It's a lot more tricky than I at first anticipated to get it working properly. And we only learned, probably like a month of frustration in, that there were actually 3 variables we could control and not 2. We were changing the opening of the door to allow coffee to feed through, and the fan speed, but there was also a vibration adjustment that we could make. There's a vibrator on the hopper that helps the coffee to move down the hopper and through the system to get vacuumed up. And essentially the way that it works is that you need to create enough of a vacuum to lift the coffee, but not enough of a vacuum to pick stones up and they fall out of the system. So such a simple system, works really well when it's working. It is working now, and we're super, super chuffed with it. So if I had to think of the pros and cons of our machine and our experience, I would say that our pre-purchase experience with Genio was fantastic. The customization and so on and so forth was done really well, and the options they gave us were really, really good. You could see that there was a focus on customer satisfaction, which we really appreciated. The delivery and commissioning of our machine, we felt that we were well supported, and it was a pretty simple process, although we did make a few errors more on our side than on Genio's side. From a capacity point of view, we've literally doubled our ability or our volume that we can cope with our given team, just because we've increased the size of our roaster, which has been an absolute game changer for us. I would say that the consistency has been really, really good. One of the pieces of tech that I love on this machine that I didn't expect to love is the automatic doors, the actuators opening the roaster door after the coffee's finished roasting. So when you pop it into profile or standby, I can't remember now, the door opens and it actually stays open for a predetermined amount of time. Now, interestingly, what that helps you with is actually gaining really consistent between batch protocols. So we're finding our consistency is really great, and couldn't be happier from that point of view. And yeah, just the whole interface. I was speaking in the part 1 video about the Apple M1 chip and how the chip was developed for the equipment, and because of that, on paper it's not much better as a system, but the battery life is literally doubled and the performance is increased, and so on and so forth. And it just shows that when the software and the hardware are built to work together, when the components are built specifically for the machine, there can be some gains in efficiency, which can make a really big difference. We've definitely seen that. However, there are two things that I don't love about the software. The actual bugginess of the software has been a bit of an issue. There's still some things that we're not completely thrilled with, but Genio is very open to improving, and I'm hoping that over the next sort of few months we can come to solutions on a number of those issues. And then the other thing that I really want to change, I don't know how we're going to do it exactly, is the software runs on an app and it's on a tablet. And the tablet is just too small for me. I really want to be able to see my rate of rise curve, my bean temperature curves. I want a much larger screen. We've tried mirroring the app onto our TV in the Roastery, and it worked and then bugged out, and then we lost the visuals on the app as well on the tablet, so we were not going to try that again. So I'm hoping that maybe a web app could be built, and I don't know, maybe that can work somehow. But other than that, the whole system works really well together. We're very chuffed with the interface. So yeah, from a pros perspective, by far outweighing any cons that we might have experienced. I would definitely recommend the machine if you're looking to purchase a roasting machine. I think that Genio are working very hard as a company to put out a great product, and they're growing rapidly. So if you're in South Africa and you're considering a new roasting machine, absolutely consider Genio. If I did it again, I think I would still end up with the same system. I'm a Loring fan. I'm an absolute Loring fan, but to get, the 15 kilo machine and the D-Stone and the Loring system, we would have been in for about, I think it's about 1.8 million rand when I was doing my research, and this didn't cost that much. So we saved a serious amount of money, and maybe for now, at our phase in our business growth, this is the perfect solution for us. So guys, I'm sure there's a ton more that I could unpack for you. If you've got any questions, please hit the comments below. I will be scanning them. I will answer questions. If you haven't watched part 1, go give that a watch. It's quite interesting now looking back on the things I thought we would enjoy and then the things we actually have enjoyed. Probably a few surprises in there. And yeah, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe. We're putting out lots of great content. We're working with a fantastic media creator just for literally the last 4 or 5 videos, and there's a lot more of that sort of content to come. If there's content you want to see from us, please comment below. We'd love to hear from you, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful, and yeah, stay well. We'll see you in the next one. Ciao.